Paradex is the only DEX at scale to introduce privacy. If you're publishing some state to Ethereum, then technically you can see people's position on Ethereum as well. Paradex is the only exchange where we encrypt positions on Ethereum, so you cannot actually see people's positions.
You mentioned before, you said that's why we're building on Ethereum. Have you ever thought of building Paradex on Solana?
Yes.
Anand Gomes, the co-founder and CEO of Paradigm and Paradex.
Building on-chain market infrastructure and launching an institutional crypto options marketplace.
With over $1 trillion in lifetime volume.
Why are you so bullish on the Perp space?
Because I truly believe that Perplexes are really the financial supercenters of the internet economy. Because for the first time, you have one entity that has a bank, a clearinghouse, an exchange, a brokerage, a custodian, all in one.
What do you want crypto to be?
My personal mission is to build this wealth creation engine for the world. And every single person in the world needs to have permissionless access to this wealth creation engine.
It's a bear market and you're launching a token.
In like 5 years, whether we're successful or not will not be dependent on which month of that year did I decide to launch my token in. It's going to be determined based on how good is my product and how much value and utility do I provide to them.
Paradex is launching its token very soon. How can your community spot as early as possible who is there for token generation event and who is there for teams gonna exit?
Hi everyone, this is the little bit that I know none of you like that can help us make a huge difference for this show, and we want to take it next. 71% of the people who regularly watch When Shift Happens have not subscribed. And so all I'd ask you, if you want to make a huge difference, is the following. If you've seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team, hit the subscribe button, and we'll continue to build this show for you. Thank you.
Ultimately, I figured out that my entire condition is tied to my gut.
Yeah, it's probably most conditions are tied to gut.
Yeah. And the prescription for most, there's no prescription these days which is don't eat anything. It's like,
because it's free.
It doesn't bring
any revenue. Yeah, exactly. No, so 25 days.
25-day fast.
I did, yeah. I've lost 20 pounds in 25 days, yeah.
Like juice fast, or what do you do?
First 10 days I did coconut water only. The balance 15 days I did coconut water and just one small cup of clear vegetable broth. So still just water, but I used to boil vegetable broth every day.
As a treat for the day?
Yeah, mainly for the salts, because I'm realizing coconut water doesn't give you salt. So if you put the vegetable broth and then you put salt in it, then your electrolytes and stuff, you get that. But honestly, bro, game changing. Game changing. For me, I haven't felt this relief in 2 years. So I would highly recommend it to you.
Yeah, I used to do these 7-9 days. I mean, everyone 25 days is crazy. Helped me massively.
Yeah. Full reset of the system, right? I felt energized. And even now, my tolerance for I'm not going back to my baseline bad. It's my baseline bad is now much less bad, right? So it's incredible.
So what's the plan? Is to do multiple fasts
correct, yeah.
Next year or two,
correct,
to lower this baseline bad.
I realized that effectively it's ultimately it's about stress to the gut. The largest concentration of mast cells in anybody's body is in your gut. And for me, my disease is mast cell activation syndrome. And so that means basically what it is in a nutshell is my cells are hyperreactive. And so I've realized intuitively, no doctor has told me this, that because of lack of sleep, stress, bad food choices, my gut is damaged and it's become kind of in this hypervigilant state. That's why the mast cell, kind of activation, it activates kind of almost erroneously. It's not supposed to do it, but it does it. So anything incoming, it treats as bad and it activates. So I'm realizing that maybe it is that they were in such a bad state that now anything that goes in, they're no. So I'm okay, what's the solution? The solution is, all those three things, sleep, let me just not eat anything, because if I'm not sure what's going to trigger me, let me just not eat anything. And then let me do a lot of yoga and breath work to basically calm the energy around my gut. And honestly, in what I've felt in the last 2 months, I have not felt in the last 2 years. It was driven out of desperation. Like I was in such a bad place, and I'm sure you to some extent probably feel that, right? Where like you've tried everything and nothing is working. And now you're like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to figure this out myself, because the body is a system at the end of the day, right? And you know what's going in and what's, you know, what your reaction to it is. So why not just kind of like scientifically go about that, right? So that plus ChatGPT and, you know.
Fasting plus AI.
Yeah. But man, I highly recommend it. A long fast.
No doctor supervision. GPT supervision?
No doctor supervision. GPT, not GPT supervision, but yeah, research, right? Like I've done this before. So this is not the first time I was fasting. I've been fasting for the last year, but like, you know, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days. And of course, I understand like electrolyte imbalances and salts and all of these different things, sugar, like all of these things. You need to be very mindful that like, oh, if I'm feeling weak or if it's my muscles are cramping, you need to have that awareness that like, okay, this is because of magnesium, this is because of sodium, that like, so I've done this in the past enough to know, like take cues from my body. And so now when I did it and went for this long stretch, honestly, it was not bad at all. It was not bad at all. I think the first 3 days were probably the hardest. Beyond that, it was a breeze.
Well, you do it out of despair, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to do.
It's desperation.
Just do there's no choice.
Yeah, there's no
What's the
choice.
next thing
Yeah.
I can do?
But knowing like, because when you're in that bad state, even like sometimes like the good state is like out of reach because you've forgotten what that feels like.
Yeah.
I've been suffering for 2 years, right? So like I've forgotten what it feels to be good. So you
get used to everything.
You're just
Absolutely.
used to operating in that state. So to go back for 25 days and remind myself of what a good state feels like, man, that was like, I was like, thank you, you know, like this, somebody up there, you know, likes me. So yeah, honestly, it's a miracle fasting. I mean,
I think too.
Yeah.
I think so too. It's a miracle.
it is. Your body is a miracle for sure.
It's much stronger and more resilient than people think, actually.
Yeah.
Every part, right?
100%.
And you're able to build businesses and operate at the kind of craziest level while feeling pretty bad most of the time.
Yep.
That's the man's life.
I mean,
There's no choice.
yeah, it's just, you know, the bad health piece came sort of like after, right? I think most people, but at that point, you're committed. You know, your mission is, this is my mission. I can't stop doing what I've committed to do or set out to do because I am, you know, not well. It's like your goal demands you figuring it out, right? Because you've set yourself, and not only that, it's just other people are dependent on me, right? Who have decided to join me.
Absolutely.
And on this mission, it's not my mission anymore.
Yeah.
It's our mission. And I think that sense of responsibility is just like, because when I was sick earlier last year in 2025, it was peak sickness. There was like 2 months I had to actually, you know, stop. I couldn't go to work. I was like a vegetable at home. And at that time I was trying to figure out, it's like, you know, what is this? Is this like a test where, you know, somebody up there wants to see how badly I want this? Or is this like somebody up there is saying to me, no, okay, your time is done now. Just like, you know, give this up and let somebody else manage it, right? So was it a test of my resolve, or was it to see whether I can, you know, a lesson in humility, right? And I struggle with that, honestly. But and to your point, right? It's just like, am I supposed to, like, what am I supposed to do right now? Like that was constantly in my head. Ultimately, I decided that no, this is a test of my resolve. Like, how badly do I want this? Do I want it badly enough such that this sickness that's on me, that's like I'm feeling, I can somehow get over it using the power of my mind. And ultimately I was like, you know what? Even if I don't think it's possible, I'm going to try because I have no other choice.
Quick one. I want to thank our partners who help us make this show possible. I'd like to thank our friends at Jupiter, the DeFi super app. Anything you want to do on chain, from trading to earning yield, you can just use Jupiter. Personally, I'd recommend getting the Jupiter wallet on either your laptop or your phone, 10 times faster and 10 times cheaper than the competition. You're gonna love it. Thank you to the awesome team at CastCard, my go-to card to spend my stablecoins directly with my Apple Pay to buy anything. Food, coffee, hotel night, or plane tickets without having to use a bank ever again. To support this show, please check the sponsor links in the description down below.
I think that's where the super entrepreneurial side actually is so helpful for that kind of problems that I think probably a lot of people will live with for the rest of their life. But if you're like super entrepreneurial, you actually find solutions. And think outside of the box and actually try and go for it, even to like the worst problems.
Yeah, it's like this irrational, like something with super low probability that some other person might be like, okay, this
might be reality.
Yeah,
this is my reality.
Yeah, like I accept this.
Yes.
Like this is my thing. And you know, in our case, I think it's never really like, I don't think anything is just accepted, right? You're constantly questioning, right? You know,
Ever accept.
like it's like you're like, no, but maybe there is. You know, I think there's an optimism in entrepreneurs that ultimately, because if you're not an optimist at some level, you will never build.
No, never.
Right?
Why would you do that?
Exactly.
Why would you hurt yourself so?
Yeah, why would you put yourself through this stuff?
For me, the logic was always, if there is a problem, there must be a solution. Otherwise, there would not even be the problem initially. Because I think about, maybe it's just too rational, right? But like there is a balance or an equilibrium that in the ideal state you are, whether in business or anything, market, whatever, right? Well, if there's a problem, there's a solution. Because initially there was this optimum, right? Or it exists at least. Maybe you never reach it. Maybe you're born differently, but it exists. Therefore, like there is a solution. You just haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
But you can only find it if you try stuff. Most people are stuck.
And I think I think to the point you mentioned earlier about entrepreneurs kind of going, trying when somebody would not, a normal person would not. I think it comes down to the second piece that you talked about, which is the piece where, I think the fact that, okay, I have this problem, and you said, right, okay, there might be a solution out there, let me try, right? But I think what makes entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs a little bit different is the fact that you're used to figuring out frameworks for problems, right? And so because you look at some, like in my case, for example, when I was going through this thing, and by the way, there's no cure for my sickness, right? All the doctors said, okay, there's no cure for this. But I went online and I was like, okay, let me do my research. Fine. If you're saying, fine, like you said, I don't accept. So I'm going to try and do my own research. And so the part where I went from, okay, I have this thing to, hey, you know what? I think this could be solvable is a problem. It's that problem definition where ultimately there was, some point where I decided, I was like, you know what? My body is a system at the end of the day. It has inputs and it has outputs, right? If I use this same framework for problem solving at work, whether it's blockchain issue, whether it's in a cloud issue, whether it's a people issue, whatever, it's like there's some sort of system where if you sort of understand the system has inputs and outputs, and there's some cause and effect reaction, and ultimately you're like, okay, I know my body best. Because there's inputs to it. I choose what goes in my body, the stress I put myself through, the sleep and all that. And then my reaction, let me just start observing that. And I think that is the part that makes us and entrepreneurs kind of different, is because you're used to putting frameworks around problems that other people don't necessarily, they have not, maybe they haven't acquired those frameworks yet because normal life doesn't demand that off you. You just go about life and there's a path and people follow. It's not their fault. It's just they've not been forced to acquire this skill set in some way. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the one thing that is so important is if you figure out these health issues, because there's nothing worse than not having health.
Absolutely.
If you figure out how to cope or even how to solve some of these health issues, you're literally unstoppable, because building a business, compared to that, is so easy.
I mean,
it's not easy at all, but it's much easier, right?
No, it's a cake because it's so unpredictable. You don't know what's wrong with you, and nobody else can help you, right? For business, there's frameworks. You can, there's so many examples. But if you literally are dealing with something where it's uncurable, and then you somehow feel better, then you definitely have a chip on your shoulder after that. You start to believe inside in this power that I feel like all of us have. You start to tap into that in some way. And then, to your point, like then any problem becomes, and I've not solved my problem, but I am way better than I was a year ago. And that the only difference is I decided I wanted to be better and I approached it in a way in which I thought was scientific. And then I'm like, okay, this is power, because you have this power now where you can control pretty much anything using just your mind.
The definition of surviving.
It's a great time to be talking about survival right now because, it is. The market has gone to shit for the 100th time, at least in my short lifetime in crypto. Probably an 8th cycle.
Yeah, you said
I've
6,
stopped counting.
7
Yeah, I
cycles.
can't even. Yeah, I've stopped counting.
Most teams disappear in bear markets. It's kind of crazy because you think with time, there would be more serious people joining and there would be more serious people surviving, but it doesn't feel like it's like that at all. What's the playbook to not just survive but become stronger every cycle?
I think the at the core of it, if you really want to distill it down to one thing, it is just showing up every day. Right? It's literally that easy in some sense. Right? I'm not trying to trivialize, how hard building a business is. It is very hard. Right? I'm not trying to take anything from all the entrepreneurs in the world that kind of go through that, myself included. But to a large extent, especially when things are going bad, you don't necessarily have the answer to like how you're going to solve the problem. But for me, the thing that has always worked is, one is this unshakable optimism in what your goal is. And two, kind of like the perseverance and the discipline to just show up towards that goal every day. Right? And then that little progress that you make every single day, ultimately the tide does turn, right? I mean, I've been through so many cycles now where it ultimately does turn. And at that time, you look back and you're like, well, what did I do different? And largely, I think in my case specifically, I was like, okay, maybe I made some pivotal moments. There are some key decisions here and there. But most of the times, it's just like just showing up. Because showing up, it's like, I think Brian Armstrong had a really good quote about this, where I think he said, action produces information.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think this is just a manifestation of that quote. In
That
some
is
sense,
so
right?
true.
It's just,
Oh my God.
it's fully true. And showing up is a manifestation of that quote in some sense, because the action is just showing up. The action is just pushing yourself in a particular direction when you don't have enough information and you are operating with basically asymmetric information. But the belief in the fact that, okay, this train needs to move forward, and this optimism that you have that is kind of fueling you to, move forward, ultimately, I think is the thing that makes a difference in the long term. And I think at the end of the day, I think the people that make it and the people that don't, I think this is the one thing that separates them, is this: you need to just have this quality of being super, super determined and have this irrational optimism in where you're going or the thing that you're building, right? Because if you don't have that, you will not show up effectively, right? Every day.
How do you stay motivated no matter what? How do you show up even when you don't want to?
That is a tough question.
And when you're sick at the same time.
Yeah. This irrational optimism that I'm talking about, right? I think that's kind of like the PC way or like people, that's the easy way of explaining to people what this thing is, right? In my case, I've always been driven by this notion that I have a higher calling, and my higher calling is to build this wealth creation engine for the world, right? Which is ultimately what Paradex is, what the mission of Paradex is to build this wealth creation engine that anybody in the world can tap into to unlock financial freedom for them and their families and so on and so forth, right? So this thing comes from, this belief that like, hey, I have this purpose in life and ultimately I'm working towards my purpose, right? So when I'm sick or when I'm struggling with all of these issues, or the market is down, or whatever, and nothing is going your way, that is the thing that I come back to, is just like, okay, my mission is still not done. Like I'm still haven't achieved anything yet, right? I'm still just starting out. Like in some sense, we're still 0.1% of the way there. And so that, plus knowing that like if I just show up every day, the tide will turn, right? So I think the combination of those two things, as simple as that sounds, is the thing that kind of like has gotten me out of the dark times, or the times when I'm even physically not able to, but somehow I have to reach down deep inside and say, you know what, nah, fuck it, just get up, just get to the bathroom. For me, it's that getting out of bed and going to the bathroom, getting out of the shower. Because once that's it, then cool. The rest of the day is like easy, right? But just that first step, I feel is always the hardest.
How hard is it to run a crypto exchange?
It's stressful. It is very stressful. It is fun, but it's very stressful, right? Like the fun and the stress basically are two sides of the same coin, right? Because it's so exciting. It's 24/7. It's 366. You're dealing with people that are peoples with money. It's kind of like a high stakes game. I like to say that crypto and crypto exchanges specifically, or like anything financial in crypto, most crypto is finance stuff. But when you're dealing with applications that are 24/7, 366, it's just on, there's no off button, and you're dealing with so much of people's money. It's like $250 million in our contract. That's like the highest stakes game, right? Because you're dealing with people's money, and there's no off button. There's no like, let me just go away for the weekend. Like that's not possible. And so like there's so many, and then of course the market is so volatile, right? So you have money, people's money, the exchange never being closed, and the market being super volatile. Crypto cycles are kind of notorious for being super volatile as well, right? So that's a recipe for, both excitement and kind of, really bad things, and just like stress, right? When the exchange goes down, or like, just so many things that can happen that have gone wrong. So it is super stressful, but I can't say that. I mean, it's stressful a lot of the times, but it's also fun, because you get to build something so complex that like very few people in the world, very few teams in the world can accomplish at the scale that you can, and do it well, right? There's A, building it, and then B, building it and running it well. And I feel like this, there's a lot of people that can build, but there's not a lot of people that can actually execute well on the mission, because you need to understand about exchanges, blockchains, tech, market microstructure, retail psychology. It's just like there's so many things, and just is this constantly dynamic shifting petri dish that is just constantly moving, and you're just figuring stuff out on the fly. So that's the part I feel that's very exciting.
How do you find these people? And how do you motivate them to join you?
I think it, I've changed my hiring style. Like it's a complete 180 from when I started, right? I started out obviously in the US. The company was founded there. And I hired initially people that I thought were from startup culture in Silicon Valley, right? Now, the unfortunate part about at the time, basically, I'm talking about, let's say 2018 onwards, is just like tech in Silicon Valley had an amazing run, right? You had basically unlimited free money. The money printer was basically printing. All these tech stocks were up. Everybody is paying these engineers and all these tech people a lot of money. So they had forgotten, Silicon Valley culture had fundamentally changed. It was not this the true startup culture of like the hustle culture. Like we were at least 10 years past that, right? And people were super, super comfortable. And so when I initially hired these people, I was like, okay, I think this is startup culture, right? And so I did like what I thought was the conventional thing, because of course I didn't know anything. Then of course FTX happened, and the downturn happened, everything went to shit. And I realized that like, okay, once things, go bad, it's like a handful of people that decided to stick it out, with me and around me, and basically, with the company, still believe in the mission.
The same happening in the market in general. And in the different teams happens within the team.
Yeah, it happens in the team as well, right? Because it's like, and you as a founder, it's hard not to take these things personally, right? I'm sure you as a founder, you've probably seen that, right? Because you have this vision and you're super passionate about your vision and you keep building. And then when things go bad, people are like, oh, you know what, cool, thanks now, I'm out.
I had this problem with co-founders actually.
Yeah.
Massive.
I mean, this happens with everybody, right? And like the resolve of people, you really get to see what the character of these people is, right? And like, I don't think necessarily it is about character as much as it is about, you get to learn what their true motivation is, right? For some, it is money. For some, it is solving complex problems. For some, it is like having impact on the world, right? But that doesn't get actually tested until something really bad happens, right? In our case, of course, FTX was that event where like obviously market was, shit. So crypto was out of fashion. We ourselves almost kind of went bankrupt. But the handful of people that stayed who are today are still my core people, my guys, right? Where like I'll go to war for these guys. Why? Because I know that these guys will go to war for us. And the difference in hiring that kind of like I very like deliberately affected after FTX was I now tell people that, hey, your life is going to suck because my life sucks, right? I'm in this for the long term. This is my life's mission. I'm going to work super hard on this. And everybody around here who's stayed with me, who's part of this core team, is also along for the ride. They also believe in me and us and this vision, right? So I don't want to give you this expectation that you're going to come here and the price is going to go up or the equity is going to go up in some way and you're going to make a boatload of money and your life is going to be amazing and it's all like, sunshine and rainbows. Like, no, your life is going to suck because my life's going to suck and everybody else's life here also sucks, right? But I will promise you that you will do your life's best work. And I try to be as transparent about this as possible. In fact, I interview everybody that comes in the firm now, right? So every hire since 2022, since FTX, I basically have the final executive interview, right? And this is the conversation. What I just said to you, I literally say word for word for them. I literally say to them, yo, this is not an easy place to work. I am not an easy person to work for, right? Why? Because this is my passion. This is my life's work. I approach this as if this is sacred. So if you come along and now you approach this and have a different attitude, then it's going to be conflict between you and me. And we don't have managers. We're such a small team where like, if you own something, most likely I will be working with you on that thing. So there's no place to hide, right? So the good part about this hiring methodology is just it right away when I say this, you can tell it's like a fight or flight response, right? Some people, the people that I know for sure, like they perk up, they say, no, I want this. Like this is what I want. This is what I've been missing in my current job and this is what I want. And then right away in that either the glitter in their eye or the change in their body language, okay, this person, he wants to win, right? Or it's like, oh, they start asking about, but what about work-life balance? What about this? Like you can tell like they're trying to see, how much leeway there is. And they're like, okay, no, this is not the person that I want, right? So yeah, I mean, it has had a very profound and like real impact on how I think about who is the right person to come along for this role, right? And I'm never going back to hiring the other way, right? This is the way. This is the only way, right?
Very honest way.
Yep.
Thank you to our friends at Paradex for supporting this show. Paradex is the leading perpetuals decentralized exchange with zero fees, deep liquidity, and privacy. Trade on Paradex by using the link in the description down below. At When Shift Happens, we're huge believers in freedom, and privacy is at the core of it. That is why we partnered with Zashi Wallet, the easiest self-custody wallet for private transactions. You can send, receive, and spend Zcash without middlemen or surveillance using Zashi, the wallet that was built by the team that launched Zcash in 2016. Big thanks to our sponsor, SumSub, the leading full-cycle verification platform for crypto, trusted by 8 out of 10 of the world's largest exchanges. If you're building in crypto, you already know. Fraud moves fast and regulators never chill. SumSub gives you full-cycle verification in one stack. KYC, KYB, transaction monitoring, and even full travel rule compliance across 1,800 plus virtual asset service providers. Their AI flags suspicious behavior and account takeovers in real time, before damage is done. Check the link in the description down below to learn more.
Be honest with me about your deepest and most fundamental belief. What are we doing in this crypto industry right now? What does crypto represent and what should it be?
No, it's a great question, because I feel like in the last 6 months or year or so, when, obviously this last year started with crypto being kind of like in fashion, like the regulatory environment started to change, and, all these institutions now coming in talking about tokenization and Web3 and all of that. But I feel like we ended the year, and even like the start of this year, with like people, like at least crypto native people, talking about like, hey, or at least feeling like there's this battle now for the soul of crypto, right? Which is like, oh, are we just gonna stand by where all these institutions sort of like come in and they kind of like re-intermediate, kind of crypto, which was supposed to be decentralized, and it had all these principles and these, cypherpunk kind of like principles, etc. And so I do think that is a very real force, which is there is always going to be this force where, people are going to come in and they're going to try and take this vision of crypto, or this like force that is crypto, and they're going to try and mold it in a way that works for them. It might not necessarily be what is in the long-term interest of the vision, etc., but it works for them. And they will sell it to you as if it is, oh, actually, no, this is the same thing as the thing you are talking about, but it's just in my way, right? And they'll use nice marketing and so on and so forth. I do applaud people like Vitalik for staying true to what the original ethos of crypto is, right? I think he just put out a post maybe a couple of weeks ago where I think it was something to the effect of like, hey, guys, let's not forget that, like, yes, I mean, there's all this nice thing about finance coming on chain and, decentralized NASDAQ and blah, 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 blah. That's all good, like long term for the world. I think we all agree that. But let's not forget that we can't compromise on our principles of decentralization and censorship, or, or freedom of speech, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that is something I deeply, and that's why, honestly, that's the reason we built on Ethereum, right? Is because I think he is so deeply committed to making this a force for good in the world, right? And I know that like, unless he like goes away or like gives this up in some way, Ethereum will not change, right? So I think that, so your question was, what do I think? What do I think is effectively what I'm saying, which is, hey, there's this battle for the soul of crypto that is constantly being fought. With every new wave as crypto grows, there's going to be kind of like a reassertion of like new force comes in and then tries to change this thing. And it's really up to us and people like Vitalik, like you, me, entrepreneurs in the space, who I think are like right long-term builders. We have the right values. We have the right vision for what crypto needs to be or wants to be. And that's the reason why I signed up, for example. But we have to constantly fight this battle. I don't think it's a given where you can just say, oh, cool, Ethereum is good now, right? Like even when Ethereum is big, like there's going to be some new force that comes in and says, no. Actually, this thing in my way, and actually this is also the same way, and it's good for the world, and kind of is blowing smoke in your face, right? And you're like, no, not really. This is the way. Let's stay this way.
What do you want crypto to be?
It comes from what our personal vision is and my personal mission is, which is to build this wealth creation engine for the world, right? And every single person in the world needs to have permissionless access to this wealth creation engine, right? Now, permissionless access means, okay, it needs to be kind of, permissionless and, nobody can censor you. It truly means permissionless in the sense that like, oh, nobody needs to gatekeep you or needs to find out your information, privacy, things like that, right? So I think which is ultimately the original ethos of crypto, right? Which is like a decentralized kind of self-sovereign money. And our thing, Paradex, is really an app that sits on this foundational vision of crypto, right? Not just ETH, but also Bitcoin, right? And so to me, these are the two core principles of crypto, right? Self-sovereign money and permissionless access. And whatever comes with these principles, right? Like I'm just building one app, but I'm sure there's other manifestations of apps that are building with the same intention. And so in everything we do, we try to make sure that we never kind of move away from these core principles.
Tell me more about the privacy aspect
Of Paradex.
So Paradex is the only DEX at scale today to introduce privacy. And privacy happens basically at 3 layers, right? One is at the L1 layer. So we are an L2, right? So we are a app chain that is built on Ethereum, just as a refresher. But it is, so we use an actual blockchain, which is on the L2, and then we settle on L1, right? Now, if it is a blockchain, that means everybody's accounts are kind of visible on chain, right? And then 2 is if you're publishing some state to Ethereum, then technically you can see people's position on Ethereum as well, right? So when I say privacy is 3 layers, Paradex is the only exchange or DEX where we encrypt positions on Ethereum. So you cannot actually see people's positions, or if you see it, it will be encrypted. At the L2 level, which is the blockchain level, you actually need authenticated access. So that means if you want to pull your position, then you can see your position, but everybody else, unless they have your credentials, they cannot see your position. So again, it's basically masking or authentication. And then number 3 is your orders. Our orders are off-chain. So basically you can think of it as like not something that's not on chain, right? It's not visible, but it's in the sequencer, but it's like, it's not, or it will be in the sequencer, but it is not on chain, right? And so this guarantees any person that if I'm trading on Paradex, I don't have to worry about getting liquidation hunted or my position's known, so I get squeezed in some way. It's not possible.
You mentioned before, you said that's why we're building on Ethereum.
Yep.
Have you ever thought of building Paradex on Solana?
So yes, this was a battle that I had to fight internally when, if you remember 2023, the Solana sort of heyday, 2022, 2023, right? When Solana was doing, of course, it was doing amazingly well from a price perspective.
Which has a massive impact on the people's perception of the ecosystem, obviously.
Yeah, price does matter, right? Like anybody that tells you that price does not matter is either doesn't understand or has a very naive understanding of how this works. Price absolutely does matter. And when price was going up in 2022, 2023, and Ethereum was not scaling, right? So you had this kind of perfect win, kind of like storm of one ecosystem doing phenomenally well and scaling plus price going up, and the other ecosystem price going down and not scaling because the infrastructure was not there, right? And so at that time we made the decision that's like, no, hey, we're actually going to build on Ethereum, and we're going to build Ethereum because why? Because this was the long-term vision of how I think blockchains and applications on blockchain should be built. It's specifically high throughput, low latency applications. I don't think you could build them directly on the L1, right? That was a driving kind of force around why that was my thesis or our thesis. However, at that time, this was so hot, and all the engineers in our company were like, hey, we need to build on Solana. The whole world is moving on, building on Solana. Why aren't we building? I'm super proud of myself that no matter the pressure kind of internally, I said no. This is not the long-term choice for us technically. And I pushed back for all these reasons that I mentioned. I think the monolithic way is not the right way to build applications at scale, specifically applications like us, high throughput, low latency. At that time, actually, even though the price was going up, Solana actually was having a lot of problems. They had a bunch of RPC congestion issues. I don't know if you remember back then. And oddly enough, that data point was powerful enough where like, okay, I think people less believed me for saying this was the right long-term technical choice. And they more believed the fact that like, oh, this actually, yes, this thing actually does have problems. Like we couldn't build an exchange on a blockchain where that was basically just like down every, few days, right? And so but I think that's the job of an entrepreneur in some sense as a founder, right? You're supposed to, most people only look at the short term. They only look at the things that are visible and they're like, okay, I'm going to make my decision on the things I can see, right? And then I think like as a founder, your job is to be almost like looking to the future, right? And say, yeah, this data point might be right now, but this might happen and that might happen and this might do this thing and actually this might not work out, right? So that's just from like, okay, you kind of like extrapolate into the future. But I think more than anything, for me, it was always like, okay, what are the first principles? Like, what are our first principles? And we just keep coming back to that. Like, if we believe that like, hey, the monolithic way was the better way to scale and build, then we would do that. For us, it was always like, no, the modular way is better. And so no matter how good the monolithic way was, at that time, from a first principles perspective, I was like, okay, this is not going to be the right long-term choice for us. So then we said no. So there was actually a time when there was a lot of pressure internally for us to build. And, I said no. And ultimately that choice, we persisted. And, I'm super happy for it because now, if we had done that, we would not be in the place that we are today, for sure.
Did you ever regret not being building on Solana?
Regret is like
shit, we should.
Maybe
we should be doing.
Yeah, there's always this doubt is an inevitable part of this game, right? Like as a founder, I'm sure you've been through this as well. You've probably made some choices here and there, and then after be like, I don't think any founders can get rid of doubt, right? That's always going to be a thing. So yeah, I think in 2023 I can tell you there's probably every single investor conversation that I had that year, 2023. And I can specifically recall one investor conversation when I was visiting New York with one of our investors in Paradigm, and he was like, "This makes no sense. Like, why are you doing this? Like, this makes absolutely. You have a captive distribution on the L1. There's already there. People are already trading there, and you're saying you want to build on something that is maybe a year or a year and a half away. And Ethereum at that time was saying like this is a year away, but Ethereum timelines are always like 1 plus you add another 2, right? And so it was like pulling teeth in these conversations because you had to defend this position. And so yeah, absolutely. At the time, obviously I knew that okay, this was the right long-term choice. But like at those times, I feel like when literally every single person is like telling you that like no, this is a dumb move. At that time, you feel like, you know what, I just wish you shut up, right? So
it's like when you're buying Bitcoin in a bear market, instead of buying a house or whatever, you say, oh shit, I wanted to buy the house, but now Bitcoin is down so much, I need to allocate the money to crypto and Bitcoin. And your family and your friends are once again, they're like, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Shut up.
Yeah,
trust me.
Or you just don't have those conversations.
You don't need anything.
But you didn't say anything because I think
I don't have money.
Yeah,
I can't buy it.
The best thing, like, look, in a situation like an investor conversation, it's unavoidable because you're making these decisions. You have to explain yourselves, right? But I won't put myself in a position where like if I don't need to say something and because like why do that, right? Like why just open it up for scrutiny when most of the times it's just like if you believe something that strongly, like yes, definitely debate, but like don't just invite scrutiny for the sake of scrutiny because it's just going to add stress to your life, right? And you don't need that.
Why 25 days fast? Well, I'm going to do 5.
Well, that was a different reason, right? The reason was more out of desperation. But yeah, it is along the same lines.
What's the unshakable Northstar that drives you every day?
That we want to build this wealth creation engine for the world, right? That is the thing that I get up for every single day. And I measure, like, where are we, in this journey? Like, how far have I come? have I just started out? Am I, 10 kilometers in? So the answer is no, I haven't gotten that far. Then I need to keep going.
Why are you so bullish on the perp space specifically?
I think, people call Paradex is, Paradex is a Perpdex. There's a bunch of other Perpdexes out there. And I think the word Perpdex is almost like a disservice for what this thing really is and what it really can be. Because I truly believe that Perpdexes are really the, financial supercenters of the internet economy. I put out a tweet some time ago about how I think DeFi is going to take over the world, but specifically Perpdexes are going to eat all of finance because for the first time, you have one entity that has a bank, a clearinghouse, an exchange, a brokerage, a custodian, all in one. So you effectively have the total available market of all of these 5 entities into one entity that is basically seamlessly composable. You don't need to I have JP Morgan, but then I need to move money to my Fidelity account. Oh, then I need to move money into my retirement account, or somebody else needs to have custody. No, it's one account. It's one unified account that you have instant permissionless access to any financial opportunity and asset in the world, right? That the TAM of these businesses, if you just think about that, right? What is the total TAM of all the banks, all the brokerages, all the clearinghouses, all the custodians in the world combined? And we find ourselves one out of, let's say, the top 5 exchanges in the world or top 5 entities in the world that can go after this pie. The total TAM of this is in the trillions, right? Even if you say that hey, I am 1% of this market, that is still an insane amount. That is a massive amount, right? So I think so there's one part of it which is okay, there's one part of it which is have I achieved my mission, or how far have I come, on this path to achieving my mission? The other part is, holy shit, this is a massive opportunity. And we find ourselves one out of 5 teams that is in the running to basically win a majority slice of this pie. Man, that's how many teams in the world, how many founders are lucky enough to get up and say, man, I have a shot at this. I have a shot at winning a major, huge slice of this pie. And that's, I think it's a privilege. So I think there's 2 sides to it. Is the fact that you have this deep, unshakable belief in this mission, but 2, also, this is exciting. This is very, very exciting.
Quick one. I want to thank our partners who help us make this show possible. Thank you, Trezor, my favorite cold wallet to store my crypto and make sure I sleep well at night. If you want to order a Trezor wallet and sleep well at night too, you can use my promo code WSH10 to get a 10% discount. Big thank you to Bitwise Asset Management for backing today's conversation. Bitwise is a crypto specialist asset manager with more than $15 billion in client assets across 30 plus crypto solutions, including ETFs, index funds, alpha strategies, staking, and more. However you like to invest in crypto, Bitwise has something for you. Thank you to our friends at Sui for supporting this show. Sui is a scalable layer 1 blockchain that's fast, secure, and affordable, built by previous Facebook developers, and that delivers the benefits of Web3 with the ease of Web2. To support this show, please check the sponsor links in the description down below.
For anyone who wants to learn more about this rebuilding this financial center of the world, you can have a look at our last conversation together where we detailed that in much more depth a couple of months ago.
What do you think happens to the Perp space in 1 year's time? It's a bear market now. Things are supposed to be slower, less exciting. But you're omega bullish.
Yeah.
For the year.
You're born bullish. this unbridled optimism, I don't think it's possible for me to be bearish. I honestly have thought about this. It's I think in any situation, whether it's work or not work, I think it's just, I'm just wired. I think we are wired differently in that you always see why it could work. rather than why it, of course, it's not that we can't see the reasons why it will not work. Of course, you can see that. But you can always see the reasons why it will work. And then you say, but this is maybe 10% probably, but with a little bit of love and a lot of effort and discipline, maybe that's 50%. Maybe that's, with effort, enough effort and good execution, I think anything you can change probabilities, right? So for the perp tech space in this year, I think why I'm super bullish is this year, metals have had a breakout run, right? Not just in crypto, but in TradFi, right?
Yeah.
And for the first time, you saw metals trade in huge numbers in not just on centralized exchanges, but also actually it was led by the decentralized exchanges, right? And so we have now shown the world that this is not just a, casino on Mars for some magic tokens that we've created. Like, we can tokenize real world assets, we can put them on chain, and liquidity, we can basically bootstrap liquidity for these things very, very quickly. And there's a ready market for this to trade it, right? And now, so it's like, so this vision of alternative financial system that is permissionless, it's self-sovereign or self-custodial, and there's deep liquidity for you to get what you need to with immediacy. This vision is like, you can see it now. It's not something in the future that you're talking about. It's just like, it's there. It's right now. It's right here. And so if that is possible, and we've taken, let's say 1-2% of the market, I think in a year's time, I mean, this is probably going to come off as being super, super bullish or over bullish. But I think by the end of this year, we will not just be 10% of like crypto volume of, the centralized exchanges. We will be 10% of real world assets. For the assets that we list, let's say FX and commodities, these two specifically, I think we will be at least 10% of the global C5 market, right? If you aggregate all the exchanges, right? Not just one or two, but if you aggregate all of them.
Yeah, I think what people didn't understand was how people were thinking, these crypto people are kind of like fooling around. There's a new shitcoin. Okay, these decentralized exchanges can list the latest trendy shitcoin faster than a centralized exchange.
Yeah.
Well, now, if there is something else than a shitcoin that is
moving fast,
a trend,
they will list it.
They will list it first, and people will go there to trade, and it's probably going to get bigger and bigger.
Exactly.
And so, I think a bit like the Trump launch was kind of, for me, like the aha moment on decentralized exchange versus centralized exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was precious metals, right?
Yep.
Was probably an aha moment for some traditional finance people to say, oh shit, we can add other things than just a meme coin or a shit coin. And this is being used.
Yeah.
And there's
not just magic internet coins, right? They're real world assets, and they're trading in significant size.
There are two types of TGs. Token generation event and teams gonna exit. This comes from you, actually. Paradex is launching its token very soon. So you're the right person to ask. How can your community or a potential community member spot as early as possible who is there for token generation event in terms of teams, and who is there for teams gonna exit?
So by the way, that acronym, or the alternative kind of explanation of what that acronym is. Actually, I got to give credit to one of our community members, Lazarillo, who came up with this thing where he says, TG is teams gonna exit, which I always thought was funny. So I shared with you. So it is, I don't want to steal his thunder, but
just for newcomers here who are not super familiar with crypto, TG means
token generation event. It typically means when the team launches a token and that token becomes freely tradable in the market, and then you can freely buy and sell it on exchanges. That's usually what it means, right? It's basically the equivalent of what an IPO is in some sense, but for projects with tokens, because we don't have equity, right? So So it's like, it's a big moment. It's because you've been working for a long time. You're trying to bootstrap a product. You bootstrap the community. And then now you're saying, okay, hey, you know what? Now we're going to list this thing and we're going to see what the market thinks it is worth. So it is a pretty big deal. But as you said, there's two types of teams, right? There's teams that do this in a bid to actually use this new, because it's a wealth creation event, right, for people. And it's a liquidity event. So you can either use the fact that the token now has value to further accelerate your mission, right? Which is, I think a lot of the serious teams understand that. And they kind of intuitively follow this, like, hey, this is the path we're going to follow. Or you can do what most teams we've seen in crypto, and that's why crypto gets a bad reputation, is they follow the team's going to exit route, which is they use the token, they launch it at a high valuation, they find some kind of back channel way to dump the token or cash in, and then boom, they're gone, right? Because like there's no kind of alignment between the team's tokens and the community, right? Most of the time you will see these down-only charts for the next, let's say 12, 24 months. And then the founders, they basically shut shop and then they start another project or they just go away, right? So,
because the IPO here, traditional startups, right? They need to build a product, make a lot of money.
Yep.
I mean, arguably some companies IPO'd without making a lot of money, actually by losing a lot of money, but you need to build a product market fit that takes a lot of time. But in crypto, you're able to make crazy money as a team without even building necessarily the product. And that's the big problem here, right?
Yeah, I mean, that plus there's no regulation, right? There's no regulation. There's no real accountability for if you scam someone. In fact, almost oddly enough, repeat founders in this space somehow get, all the attention is like, oh, you launched a token. Like, what did you do? I launched a token. Like that's your claim to fame. But somehow in this market's that stupid sometimes. They're like, you see these stories keep coming up. And I've tweeted about this stuff where like these repeat founders launching like their third token and somehow people think that's bullish, which to me is crazy. But I think there's in some sense, there's obviously crypto gets a bad rap. There's a lot of bad stuff in this space, and we've just talked about that, right? Teams go to exit, repeat founders, they launch their token, they pump and dump, listing high, and then bouncing. But that same environment has also basically allowed us to differentiate, right? Which is like, I think the serious teams can look at that and be like, okay, how do I differentiate? Okay, I just don't do that, right? So one thing from a tokenomics perspective, we came up with this thing internally. And this was the kind of like the guiding principles around how we designed just the token mechanism for Dime. And we call it the transparency, alignment, and governance framework, basically, right? And it's based on 4 key principles, right? 1, you need to have alignment. So team and community alignment. 2 is investor and community alignment. 3 is radical transparency. And 4 is value accrual, right? The first one is pretty self-explanatory, which is, team and community alignment. In our case, we've done something that I don't think any team in crypto has done voluntarily. We have locked 80% of the team's tokens are tied to performance milestones. So every year post-TG, the foundation and the board will effectively come out and tell you, hey, here are the milestones for this year. And then if the team does not hit those milestones, we cannot sell our tokens. So this down-only meta, which you see, right? You list high, and then teams have time unlocks, where there's like no restriction. It's just time, right? Time is the only kind of measurement, which is like, okay, a year passed, cool, you can sell now. But it doesn't really look at, okay, how much value did you create for the community? And so we are now saying, okay, no more. We're not going to do that. We're going to say, hey, we're going to create this amount of value, and that may be through revenue. Like, Elon Musk's pay package, if you remember, he tied it to, I think it was tied to some effect of the equity price plus revenue in some way. So similar, where your revenue or the token price in some way, and it's not one or the other, it could be both, right, for example. But we explicitly tell the community in advance that like, hey, this is what we're going to try and hit. And if we don't, we can't sell. So nothing signals alignment with your community more than us contractually effectively telling the market that, hey, actually, we cannot sell if we don't hit these milestones. So alignment is a very, very key part of this. And I think most teams, have not done that so far. But I think the tokens that will do well in the future, their hallmark will be good governance through transparency, alignment, and some of these other things, right?
Your previous business, I mean, you still have it today,
Mhm.
right? Paradigm
Mm-hmm.
is an option business.
It's an institutional options exchange, yes.
So you understand the option game. How do you ensure people that we will not use this type of instrument,
Mm-hmm.
which is done a lot in crypto, by team that say they don't want to sell the token, which they actually don't really sell, but they use other instrument to cash
It's a
in?
good question. So it's a fantastic question. So there's a lot of this in right now, right? Which is teams say one thing. In our case, we've gone one step further where we actually said that we cannot sell unless we hit milestones. So if we don't hit those milestones, we know we cannot sell, right? But you're right that people can still find a way to basically back channel or some sort of derivative with some sort of OTC desk. People do this all the time. So what we've done is in our basically like the grants that the foundation has given us, right? It is actually one of the clauses where you say that as one of the requirements for accepting the grant, we have to basically attest to saying we cannot basically use the use of all these derivative instruments or hedging we cannot do that. If we do that, it's in violation of the agreement, and we can void it. So it is not just the fact that we've gone one step further and locked ourselves up to like public milestones that the community can observe, and then also look at our like how much tokens there are on the contract and basically say, okay, these cannot leave. But not only that, we've also done this on the agreement side, which is there's a clause explicitly that says, hey, we cannot use derivative instruments, otherwise it will be basically in violation of the agreement.
What are you trying to prove here?
I think it goes back to that the transparency and alignment and governance framework, right? Which is, I don't think we're trying to prove anything as much as we're here to signal to the community that like, hey, we are real serious long-term builders and like we are committed to our vision. And we're not just saying that because there's a lot of founders and projects in crypto that just say this. We're showing you, right? Don't just like, there's this phrase, right? Don't just show me, or don't just tell me, show me. So this is the show me part, which is like, hey, I can talk the talk as a founder, but I'm actually walking the walk and the team is as well, by locking our tokens up, and we're aligning them with basically measurable, public, transparent milestones that the community can see and observe, right? I think that part is super important. There's other parts to that framework as well. I just only talked about the alignment between team and community. There's also investor and community. Our investors are locked up for a year past TGE, such that, which is very similar to what you see in IPOs, right? It's like as private investors, they tend to need to be locked up past the public markets because they tend to have more information and more sophisticated, et cetera, et cetera. So we've done the same for ours. We've basically locked them up for a year, right? Beyond that, the other two pieces. One is radical transparency. So we plan to be very, very transparent with sources of cash and users of cash, in the sense that like this much revenue is generated, here are the costs of the foundation, this much rent and marketing. Why? Because it's like an income statement. It's like we want to basically signal a new chapter to crypto to say, hey, you know what? We're serious builders, but not just that. If we do it and we do it well, and our token does well, people will start basically mentally associating the token price and price doing well with this kind of good behavior that we're showing. And then hopefully other people on teams after that will adopt that, and that becomes a market standard.
It's a bear market and you're launching a token. What do you guys think? I mean, we're not here to talk about token price too much. That's not even recommended, I think, in this industry. But why do you think you guys will do well despite launching the token at a terrible moment?
I think when companies have launched, in the long term, is immaterial to your like long-term trajectory, right? Like whether I launch in February or March or in October, it's like, and I'm trying to time the market, right?
You never launch.
If you try to.
I think well, first of all, I think it's stupid because nobody can time the market. Because if we could time the market, then we'd just be investing or trading. Why would we be building, a project or a company? So that's not our job. That's not our core, what we should be doing. But over the long term, in like 5 years, whether we're successful or not, will not be dependent on which month of that year did I decide to launch my token in, right? It's going to be determined based on how good is my product, how how much users love my brand and my community, and how much value and utility do I provide to them, right? Ultimately, that's it.
Did I build something valuable?
Did I build
That's it.
something
People
valuable?
who are just so focused on like looking good at TG.
Yep.
Because there's no product,
Yeah.
no user, there's no revenue.
I think that's actually the reason why there's been so much over-indexing on timing and things like that, because they have nothing else, right? You don't have a real revenue-generating business. We have a real revenue-generating business.
You mentioned before we're going to be transparent.
Yeah.
Can you be transparent with us already now?
Yeah, I mean, in revenues, there'll be what your costs are, your blockchain costs, your marketing
But
costs.
can you give us some concrete numbers now?
Oh, no, not yet, but we will share them very soon. Post TG, that's one of our first things we could share. I don't want to prematurely share something that I'm not prepped for, right? This is something we intend to do, but we will do it right after TG.
What does the little voice in your head tell you every night when you go to sleep and every morning when you wake up?
So this little voice talks a lot. So the context is important. In what context?
Tell me the one that talks the loudest.
The one that we want to win.
Mm.
If I'm not winning, then that voice every night is, you're not winning. What can you do better? Right? Where are you? Why are you not winning? Right? Is it that the plan is not right? Is it the product that is not right? Or is it that you're not executing correctly? Like, there's this constant kind of like criticism or like optimizing that you're kind of going through every single day, right? And I mean, you're always optimizing as a founder, first of all, right? Like even in the little things. Like your job in some sense is to not worry about optimizing the little things, let your team take care of that. And you just focus on the thing that has the highest value impact and focus on optimizing that thing. So for me, it's just like, if I'm evaluating every day, like, why are we not number one? Why haven't we built a brand that lives in the hearts and minds of people yet, that is resonating?
So winning means being number one.
Winning means being number one, right?
By what metrics?
But volume, revenue, users, open interest, there's a bunch of different metrics, right? But ultimately, like, if you're the number one, like Binance, for example, there's the number one, volume by volume in crypto, but then number one in revenue as well. They tend to be highly correlated. That's the obvious one. But also the DAUs, how many users use you every day, etc. How many, open interest you have. There's like other secondary form of metrics, but those are by and large the main ones.
We're here to win.
I mean, if we're not here to win, then why am I putting myself through this, eating glass and just, crawling through mud and dirt? Just like, no, that's just
Eating glass and drinking water.
Yeah, it's just stupid. Like, it's irrational. Like, there's no, if we're not doing this to win, then like, why do it?
Thank you so much, Anand, for doing that. That was another great conversation and I really enjoyed. Thank you so much for opening up like that. I think that's one of the goals of this podcast, but people are not necessarily as open. I mean, I think we spent almost 30 minutes talking about the health, which is probably a record on this show. Probably one of my favorite parts.
I mean, I only mentioned it because we started the conversation with like, hey, I have this thing I'm going through, and I'm like, man, I have to share this with you because like I'm going through something kind of very similar, and it's definitely made a difference. So like, where I can share, I should share, right? So,
well, I might have to do another extended fast. We'll see. Thank you so much.
No, man, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
As you probably know by now, I host some of the biggest names in Bitcoin and crypto on my podcast. But a lot of the best stuff never makes it on air. The Shift newsletter is where I share that raw behind-the-scene alpha, the insights, stories, and lessons straight from my guests that you won't hear anywhere else. If you want the real inside take on Bitcoin and crypto, join my newsletter, The Shift, in the description down below.